All right. Can you see okay there? Do I make it? Oh my God, you can't see it at all. Let me change the color scheme here. Better, right?
There we go.
Yeah. Okay, good.
We can shut. Do you want? Should I shut the blind?
I thought I did, but I guess it can. I didn't quite get it all the way over. Yeah. Ah, excellent. Better. So you guys all know how to program Java? Kinda? Anybody already know Ruby? No? Anybody know Python? Oh, okay, good. All right. So Ruby and Python, I think, are pretty similar in concepts, but different in details. Now, in Python, how many lines does it take to do hello world?
One.
Okay, excellent. That's a serious language. Not like Java, where it takes like 5, right? So first thing is, if you have Ruby installed properly, then you should be able to do this. IRB, and you should get a prompt like this. Why don't you try that? That stands for Interactive Ruby. And if you can't, okay, good. And furthermore, if you do, go back to the prompt and go ruby-v. Tell me what version of Ruby you guys have installed. Just call it out.
2.0.
Just 2.0 is good enough. Anybody else?
2.0.
Everybody's got 2.0?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, great. So let me see. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make a directory so I can later on put that all into GitHub. Where's there? Ruby play. CD play. Move. Did that work? No. Thought I had some files there. No, where did I save them? Okay, forget that. I'll save them now. All right, let's say File, Save As in my dev Ruby play. That's one. And then this one also, File, Save As in, call it fun0. Fun0. Oh, no, I don't put it there. Wrong. In here. Okay. And go back here because this is a bad name. I didn't mean to do that. File, save as, Ruby1. Okay. Nope. I'm going to go back to my prompt. There it is. Go to the directory. ls move. This is Ruby rub1. I meant move rub1. Just getting things neatened up here to be fun1.rb. Remove this one. Finally. So fun0.rb has just this in it, hello world. And the way you run it is you say Ruby fun0.rb, and it does it. So basically, Ruby is a dynamic language like Python. It's not interpreted exactly, but it's also not compiled exactly. So when I say Ruby on the command line, that just means look for that file and run it. Okay. However, once you see that you can do this, a much more common thing to do. And by the way, try to keep up with what I'm doing, and if you get stuck or you want me to repeat something, just say so. Okay. So so let me go now into IRB, which is Interactive Ruby. What's the equivalent of that in Python? There's like a place where you can just type commands.
It's just a Python REPL. So the default Python. So
okay, when you type Python, you get it. Okay, got it. So IRB is just a prompt like this. And if I type a number in, it interprets, gives me back the number. Very simple. If I put a string in, hello, I get a string back. The basic fact in Ruby is that every line, every statement, quote unquote, is an expression, and it returns a value. Okay? And when I run a command in IRB, it's typing the value that is returned. So if I put 1, it's typing 1. Now, one interesting thing about about Ruby is that it's not that it's not strongly typed, but you don't have to declare variables or give them a data type ahead of time, right? So I can just say my string equals hello, and now I have a variable called my string, and its value is a string hello. And if I type that variable in again, it's going to evaluate that variable, and the value in it is a string called hello. Okay, so far so good. If I assign the same variable, now a number, that's not a problem. Now my string is equal to a number. So far so good. Now another thing that's interesting about Ruby is everything in Ruby is an object. Everything. And every object, as you guys know, if you've taken a little bit of Java, it's just like Java, it's object-oriented. Every object belongs to a certain class. So I can ask Ruby, what is the class of my favorite string, by saying dot class. And in general, the syntax is that you can put a dot after anything, and it's going to try to call a method on that thing by the name of the word you put after. So in this case, it's going to call a method called class on the object called my favorite string. And who wants to guess what it's going to tell me?
String.
Good guess. So the class of the string my favorite string is string. The class, you can even do this, of the integer 1 is fixed num. Okay? Now, let's look at arrays for a second. So I'm going to now say no, not A. The convention in Ruby is class names and constants are capitalized, variables and methods are all lowercase, and if you have a multi-word variable or method name, you use underscores, you use camel case. You don't use, it's not camel case, but you separate the words by underscore. So if I want to say my favorite string, this is how I would say it, equals bar. Okay? So now I can similarly, because we have classes like any self-respecting language nowadays, we have arrays rather, I can create a new variable called myArray and assign it an empty array. Okay? So if I ask what the class of myArray is, it's going to be, anybody? What's the class of myArray? It's an array, yeah. Okay? Now, so I have my array, it's an array, which means I can put values in it. Like, of course, like in any other self-respecting language, they start at 0 equals, I'm going to put 100 in this one, and I'm going to put my array sub1 equals 200. And now if I type this, myArray.length, I'm calling the method called length on the object called stored or referenced by myArray, and it's going to say that its length is 2. Okay? If I now say myArray sub 5 equals the fifth, a couple of things are interesting. Obviously, it can have the values in an array can have any data type I want. They're not limited to being a particular one. And also, who can guess what the length of this array is now? Say what?
6.
Yeah, 6. That's what I would guess too, 6. And if I look at my array of 4, it's nil. Nil is a special value. Nil is nil. There's nothing assigned yet. So if I type a random name, O, it's not going to give nil because it's not defined at all. But if I use nil, if I use in a conditional or something like that, let me think about that. I think there's a situation in which a variable would get initialized but not set. Anyway, nil means there's nothing there. Now there's a class of, so if I say I equals nil, for example, then I is equal to nil. There's a category of methods that end in a question mark. And they always return true or false. They're Booleans. They say, is this nil? True. Is this blank? I don't think this will work. No, because blank works on strings. String, it's not important, just to show you how equals like that, an empty string, string dot class, string, string dot nil. It's not nil, but is it blank? Oh, okay, wrong. Is blank? No. I'll come back to that later when I remember what it is. So basically, any value is an object. Any object, you can call methods on objects. So, for example, I can do this. Let me think about what I want to do here. Well, here's a fun one. A string dot methods. One thing that Ruby is very good at is what they call metaprogramming. Metaprogramming meaning, anybody heard that term before, metaprogramming? No? Metaprogramming is when you're talking to the innards of the language rather than in your own domain. So you're working inside. Like when I say dot class, that's metaprogramming, because I'm writing algorithms that talk about the internal state of the program itself. But much more fancy than that is, I can, like an eval, like you might have in Lisp, that's metaprogram. I can eval a string, a text string, and it'll execute it as if it was code. And when I say a string.methods, and it does this, that's metaprogram. That's giving me the complete list of methods that this particular object called a string can handle. And it's quite a long list. Okay? So, let me go back to my array again. So let me just copy this. That's probably the easiest thing to do. Oh, I fixed this before. Yeah. No. Yeah. Sorry, I fix this up here. There we go. I'll copy this because it'll help me do the example. A little Brandite amusement. So I'm going to say A. I don't have an array. If I did this, I'm going to get errors because there's no array called A. So I have to say A equals this. And now I should be able to paste this. And now I have an array called A that has those strings in it. Okay? This is very simple, right? Now here's some fun things I can do. Now obviously I can do A.class like before. I can do A.size like before. I can do there's a million methods. I'm not going to show you all of them. A.sample says pick a random one. Give me a random one out of there. Okay? A.sort. Give me that array sorted alphabetically. And it goes on and on and on. A.join, comma, space. What did that do?
Concatenated arrays, right? It just added the comma to each part.
Yeah, and it made it into one string.
Oh,
So it made it to a string. Yeah, exactly. Okay?
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So I did methods on like just a random array, and it gave me the option to push and pop. So these are like just standard stack procedures.
I think that they're, yes, but not fully. I mean, they're more equivalent to add at the beginning and remove from the beginning.
Okay.
But I don't think they have full stack semantics. Like, you can't check if this what is, it's just limited. It's just a shorthand. And in fact, another shorthand for that, if I have, what was it called? I can do A, bam, etc. And it added. This is essentially the same as a push. Double angle bracket means concatenate. So I could say A.push, university, and now it's added university at the end. Okay? Question? All right. And now, of course, if I go back and I do the join, I get one string with commas everywhere. And if I say .class on this, it's a string. Now here's a funny thing. What if I put class on this? Because remember, I can put a dot something on everything. Everything is an object. Everything is an object, right? So take a guess.
Class.
Yeah, class. Class of a class is class. Exactly. That's just to give you a headache. It's not very important at this point. A few more little minor tricks here. So let's go back to this. Oh, by the way, so let's do pop on this to see what it does, because you asked. So we have A. So sorry, A dot pop. It returned the last value, as I said, and it modified A, which is unusual. Okay, usually when you execute a method on something, it just returns a value. In this case, it's modifying. They say the term is it has a side effect. It has a side effect of modifying that. So if I pop again, now I get back to what I had before. Okay? There's something called string interpolation, which is very, very handy. And basically, it's something like this. It says, well, let me just copy these and show you. I'll copy each one. Let me not do it that way. Just one at a time is easier. So first of all, I said concat. Let me just erase this so you can see it better. I'm a string plus, so am I. Okay, plus means concatenate when you're talking about strings. It means obviously adding numbers when you're talking about numbers. So the next thing that's kind of fun is if I have a value called x, which is, let's call it my name, Pedo, like that. So I have a string. Now I can say this. I can do something called string interpolation. Okay, so look what happened here. Basically, this strange little incantation, pound, curly, letter, curly, gets replaced at runtime by whatever value is in that variable called x. Okay, but I can make it more fun and put a call here so that that's a complete expression in here. So I capitalize the string x. X dot methods. I don't know if I can do this dot grep cap. No, that didn't work. Star cap star. I'm just guessing. There's a way to use dot grep to search for among the methods one that has the word cap. Oh, they're all symbols. That's the problem. None of them are strings. So the reason. Okay, let me just show you this. If you look closely, each of the this is an array. Okay, because it has brackets. So in fact, if you weren't sure, you could say dot class. And if you look inside the first method and ask what the class of that is, it's a symbol. A symbol is something that starts with a colon. Okay, so I can just say quote ABC, and that's a symbol. I can say A equals quote ABC, and it's a symbol. It's a way to have a unique ID for something. And the reason that my grep didn't work is because I was looking for strings, and of course none of these things are strings, so nothing's going to work. If I'm right, then I should be able to say grep for colon to enum, and it found it. So that it's like a grep. It finds the only one. So this is annoying because really what I want is a list of strings, and I have here a list of symbols. Okay, let's see. What if I do this? X dot methods. Well, let me just start with a simpler example. What was it? What was that array called? A. Oh, I messed it up. Put it back. Everybody keeping up? Anybody lost? You want to go faster? Oh, didn't work. Why did it not work? Yeah, I have to say A equals array. Okay, now I have A with all the strings, right? Now, anybody know what MapReduce is? You guys taking data science? Anybody? Okay. It's basically it's a term that's used in the world of big data, but in the world of Ruby as well as many other languages, mapping is a process that takes one array and does something to each element and produces another array. So, for example, if I say a.map, first I'll show you and then I'll explain what we have. Who can explain 544395? Why those numbers? Somebody else? Yeah?
It's the length of
Yeah, you guys know Python. What's it called? What is this called in Python? This operation? It's called
You can use
comprehension, right? String comprehension. Is that what this is called?
Yeah, you could also use the native map operation. Like, just, yeah.
Okay, so basically what this is, map says this. Map says, first of all, this incantation is very, very important in Ruby. It's one of the big, powerful features. They're called blocks. And this is not like blocks like in a programming language, begin end blocks. They're very particular. It's basically essentially an expression you put after a method, which represents what you would call in Java an anonymous method. So it has no name, but it takes one parameter, and what it does is for that parameter, it calls the length method on it. Okay? So the job of map is it walks through every element of this array and calls this anonymous method on it using the element in the array as the parameter. So, and then it puts that into a new array. So it said, so in other words, just to drive it home, this does not say X, it can be the word. As long as this, if I don't make that, then it's going to go, why did this 444? I have no idea. X, maybe there's some X floating around. Yeah, there is an X floating around. Okay, see that? So I have X here. You see it? Yeah, you can see it. I have X on this line. It's not getting X out of the local scope of this block, so it's looking in the global scope, and it's finding X globally, which is my name, when length is 4, so it just puts a 4 in each one. But if instead of this I say the word, now this is a valid call. This little method with one statement and it gets called for each one. Okay? So, going back to what I was going to do before, if I say a dot methods, I get a list of symbols, right? Now, I had a problem with grep because grep was looking for strings. So if I do a dot map on this, because it's an array, I can do a map on it, and I say x dot to string, convert each element of this array from a symbol to a string, I get the same list, but this time as strings. Everybody with me? Now, if I'm right, I should be able to do grep now. And look for enum. See if I'm right. I'm not right. Okay, try to put this in maybe a wildcard. No. Okay, I have to go research exactly how grep works. I can do this because I have this cool thing called dash ruby grep. And I want to get regular Ruby. Nope, it's a class, this. Give me grep. Why don't I see grep? Okay, let's try this. It's enumerable. Nope. This should work. Grep, find grep by itself. And when that doesn't work, we go to Google. That always works. Ruby array grep. Find grep. There it is. Click on it. Pattern. Okay. It needs a regex, not a string there. Okay, so let's go back. I won't get into regex right now, but I'll do this. No, that's not going to do it. Go back to my text file. Copy this again. No, I don't need that. I can do it this way. A equals an array. A dot methods. That's an array of symbols. Map x to string. Now I got an array of strings. Dot grep slash enum slash. Let's see. I'll give up if this doesn't work. Phew. So I found all the methods with enum in them. That's kind of cool, right? So this is a little bit of meta programming. I'm taking a list of methods, I'm converting them to strings, I'm doing a grep on them, and finding them. To give you a hint of what's possible. Okay, let's go on. let's write a method. What took so long? Okay, so you write methods like this, def, greet, pedo, no, person, and I'm going to just say put s, which is print person. And nothing happens. Why is that nil being printed? Anybody? What's that nil telling us? Any guess? Every expression in Ruby returns a value. The expression that we're looking at here is the def expression, and it returns a value of nil because there's nothing else to return, but everything returns value. But now I have a method called greet. So if I type greet in, I'm going to get an error because I have the wrong number of arguments, 0 for 1. But if I say greet pedo, I get pedo. I didn't say hello. I should have said hello, but just my name. So greet pedo is that. Notice this though. Here's one crazy thing that people don't initially like about Ruby, but then grow to love. I don't need the parentheses. So that's why I was able to say put s hello world, and not what any other language would require, which is put s quote hello world. So methods do not require parentheses, although they're recommended if you have more than one argument. But it makes you able to do something really cool in Ruby, which they call domain-specific languages. You can make something that looks like a language that is not Ruby, maybe a language that has to do with how to plan a lab experiment that has, like, you know, load, space, quote, microscope, quote, comma, 5. Run, space, circulator, comma, 10. And it looks like a program for operating lab equipment, but actually it's just a Ruby program using the lack of parentheses. So you can make very easily a DSL using this. Okay, that's the basic thing. So I can say I can say greet pedo. Oh, this won't work, pedo. Okay. Of course, I can go the next level and say greet, leave the parens off there too, and say hello, pound, curly, like before, name, curly, pound. Oops. And then I want to put s here, put s. Oh, shoot. Then go here. And now I've redefined the greet method, which is fine. Greet pedo. And now I get hello pedo. Straightforward. Okay, next important thing are hashes. Hashes are something that I think in Python are called dictionaries, right?
Yeah,
Same idea.
Yeah, and maps in Java like this.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So in Ruby, the syntax is my contact info equals curly bracket name colon pedo address or city. Oh, sorry, city colon Arlington. Oops, I missed something. I missed a close quote. Sorry, start over. Oops. Okay, so now contact info is defined as a variable, and that's now. If you guys know JSON, the syntax in Ruby is almost exactly the same. So now I have contact info. That's a hash in Ruby. It's extremely commonly used data structure, more probably even than arrays. Use it for everything. It's very efficient. And you notice, actually, if you look closely, that it says colon city Arlington. If you remember from before, colon something means a symbol, right? So, for example, if I can say contact info of colon city. Oops. Okay. Now is one of the cases where it needs this. I'm sorry. It's not a method call. Colon city is Arlington. So you index it with brackets just like an array, but instead of a number, you put whatever the key is. Now the key does not have to be a symbol. All right. I could do this. Funny equals curly bracket contact info 100. Now what the heck does this mean? Anybody want to take a guess? It's kind of weird. Who's the fancy programming language person here? Anybody want to take a guess? No. Yeah.
It's just a hash table inside a hash table.
Well, it is close, but it's a little bit more interesting than that even. Because remember, hash tables are combinations of keys and values. In the first example I showed you, the key was a symbol. It was, colon name and colon city. In this case, the key is a hash. The key can be any object, no matter how complicated. It's not limited to being a symbol, although by far and away the most common thing to use are symbols, but there are legitimate cases, very not outrageous cases where you would use something crazy like this. And of course, it would be tricky to index this. I mean, I don't know, probably I could just say funny of contact info, and it would turn 100. Why? Because the key in this hash is this whole other hash. That's the key, and the value is 100. So when I index it by the key, it gives me the value. Gotcha? Okay. So let's go back to contact info and see if we can index it by number. No, we can't. Actually, what's going on is not so much that you can't index it by number. It's more specifically simply that there is no key in that particular hash valued at 0 or 1. And when you look up a key that does not exist, it returns nil. Can I say contact info dot length? I can. Can I say dot class? I can. Can I say dot sort? I can. Now, this is weird. I don't know why it's sorted this way. I'd have to research it a little bit. It could be that it's sorting it by the by the sort order of the keys, because it's basically saying it's returning an array with 2 entries, one for each of the original entries, and then the key as well as the value. Okay. And then finally, I want to show you one other thing, which is that there's like Java and like Python, like any language, there's a massive collection of libraries, which in Ruby they're called gems, Ruby gems. And the way you ask for one is you say require. And now I've loaded up the JSON library. If I go back here and I copy my Brandite string here. Now I don't know if I had to do some setup to get that JSON library to work. But if I now put this in, okay, so now I have A. If I say A to JSON, it converts it into legitimate JSON. So you could write this to a JSON file. If I said A to XML, I don't know if this will work. I have to load this, I have to, probably, I can try. I'm not sure whether it's require simple XML maybe. No. Oh, not. Yeah, there's another library to turn on. Okay, forget that for now. All right, let's go now. Any questions so far? Okay, let's talk about classes now. Okay, so now I'm going to switch over to my editor, and I'm going to start a new file, and I'm going to be using, just because it's going to be a pain otherwise, I'm going to call it fun2, and we're going to do some classes. So basically what I have here is, I'm going to say A equals 100, and when I, oops, let me make it bigger. When I run it, it's, well, let me just put S here. A. It's in the bottom here, it's putting the output of running it. So now I can work in a file instead of constantly sitting in IRB. But it's the same idea, right? So I'm going to start by defining a simple class. Class person, def initialize, first name, last name, at first equals fn, at last equals ln, end. And I'm going to say p equals person dot new keto, comma, salad. And I run this and everything's fine. Now let me say what happened here. So this creates a class, obviously, called person, capitalized because classes are personalized, initializes the constructor. So in Ruby land, the constructor is called initialize always. You can specify what parameters are needed. In this case, there are 2. So if I try to construct this person with just one, I would get an error. It's saying wrong number of arguments on initialize. So I need two. Okay, and then over here, the @ sign is what says these are instance variables. Now, do you guys know object-oriented? Who doesn't know the term instance variable, class, object, instance? Is that, you guys are all up to speed on that stuff? Okay. Yes? So essentially what this line 8 does is it creates a new instance of the person class. It calls the initializer, and in the initializer, by virtue of mentioning them on the left-hand side, at first, at last, causes those two instance variables to be created. Now, unlike some languages, instance variables are never accessible from the outside. So if I say put s p dot last, it's not going to work, because it says undefined method last for person record. So it turns out that whenever I say p dot anything, as I said before, it's trying to call a method on the object p. Object p is of class person. Class person does not have a method called last, I get an error. Okay? So if I put a method called last in here, and I'm going to just return at last. Unlike some languages, in Ruby you don't have to use the return keyword. The last statement of the method is the value the method returns. So if I run this now, it's going to print out p.last, it's going to call this method, it's going to return last. Okay? If I want last to always, yes?
So just regarding the return keyword, you can put in return keyword in that method?
You can. You don't. It's just not required.
Yeah, but is there like a general style?
Yeah, the stylus people don't put it in.
Okay.
You know, you have the return keyword when you have to do it in the middle of an if or something like that, which is not that good a practice. But generally, people get used to, although it's confusing for, I've heard students be confused by it, because you're so used to seeing it, and if you don't see it, you think it doesn't return anything, but it does. It returns whatever happens to be last value. Now, you can say something funny like this, of course. I don't know what this is going to do, unless last equals salus. So this says, I guess it's going to be nil. This is just an interesting construct in Ruby, and this is exactly equivalent to saying if at last equals salus, or not equals rather, then at last end. So those line 8, 9, 10, and line 11 are the same. So if I run this, I'm not even sure what's going to happen. I run it, and it's apparently nil. If I say p.last.nil question mark, I can verify it, that it's nil. Why is that? Because the last method does not have anything returning, because I don't have the at last. So it says, I don't know, this is equivalent to having nothing in here at all. Okay? So, but again, I'm going off here. So at last. I can say, oh, sorry, p equals person.new. I can say put sp, and I get an error. Oh, no, not because of that. Oh, God, right, go away. And what I get is put s says convert whatever's there to a string. And the best guess that Ruby has about how to convert an instance of the person class to a string is to just give the internal ID for it. But I can say, oh, okay, got it. I'm going to say def to s, and I'm going to return a string that looks like this. First name, space, last name. Oh, sorry, I spelled it wrong. At first name, oops, at last name, oops. Now when I run it, something's wrong. Oh yes, missing end. He's right. There's my name. If I wanted always to make it look pretty, I could say dot first dot capitalize, last dot capitalize. Now when I run it, I get capitalized. Okay? Let's do, let's see what I want to do next. Yes.
Sorry, can I ask you a question? For whatever reason, it's throwing some sort of error on mine.
Yeah. What's the error
line
say?
16 basically says wrong number of arguments, 2 for 0 when I'm initializing a new person. There's no reason why I should be doing that.
Did you do person.new with parameters?
Yeah.
I bet you didn't.
I did with parameters.
Did you spell initialize?
That's probably the issue.
Spell initializer or something?
Maybe.
Okay. Any questions based on languages you know? How would I do this, that, or the other thing? What do you miss from what you know about Java or Python? Any questions? All right. Yes.
So this, you're initializing, sorry, I missed a little, but you're initializing a new class called person, and with the initial parameters through the constructor of Peter and Salad?
Yeah, basically this line here says, look for a class called person, create a new instance of it,
Yep.
call its initializer with those two parameters, which means this with those two parameters.
Yep. So you're just calling the constructor with these.
Exactly. In fact, I can put here puts initializer called, and I run it, and there it is. Okay?
And then how, so 2s is a default toString method?
Exactly, yeah. So in other words, put s and many other things assume that any object in the universe has a 2s method on it and calls it.
And if you took it off, would the memory address appear, or would it throw
It would, no, memory address would appear, exactly. So if I got rid of this,
username and
I get that.
Nice. Awesome.
Got it?
What other built-in ones are there? Like,
Well, an interesting way to look at it is to go back to here and say, okay, a equals 100, or even better, a equals nil, a dot method. These are all the methods that nil has. Okay, so basically the ones that matter really. Sort of all crap. Kind of, is a. These are all very low-level things. There's comparisons. Everything's got a comparison operators on it. Everything's got the converted to a hash equal inspect. I don't even know what 2C2. Let's try it. Has to do with Unicode, I think.
Complex.
Complex? Oh, complex. Right. Which makes no sense that that's what it is, but okay. I don't know how that got in there. Yeah. So yeah, toString and inspect is another good one. If I say a.inspect, that's not too interesting. But if I go over here and I say p.inspect, I get something a little bit more interesting. I get actually a look inside the instance variables for it. All right, so let's go another level. Since we have 50, no more questions? Okay, I'm going to do something really quick. I'm going to go to my course notes. And go back in time to early days. Was it this one? Let's see. This one. Here it is. Let's see. Okay, great. Here's a good one. So, no, that's not the one I want. Let's do this one. Copy this. Go to my editor. Start a new file. Oh, not in there. Save over here. Select with the option on to get this funny column selection. So I can delete those line numbers. I'm going to show you something called test-driven development. Anybody ever heard that term? Okay, test-driven, huh?
Yeah, I've heard it.
You know what it is at all?
Like to set up a predetermined set of parameters for your program or project to meet, and then.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically to describe tests in this case on a very simple method that describe the behavior that you wanted to have before you even figure out how to implement it. So test-driven development means write the test first, find that the test fails, and then fix the error. Okay, so I started being very silly and said, okay, factorials. I'm going to write a method called factorials. It's going to be called fact. And I know that fact of 1 has to equal 1. Okay, so I'm going to go, okay, I'm going to run this thing. And of course, it's going to fail because, well, it's a very long-winded answer, but basically here it is. None of these tests worked. Let me comment these out just to show there's only one error. So all I got to know is, okay, I'm going to run this again. And there was one test, and it failed. See here? So, why is this very crazy error message I'm getting? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a method called factorials. I'm going to write def fact of n, and I know fact of n must equal to 1. I'm going to put just, it's going to return 1 all the time. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to run it. Awesome. Tests work. All right, let's go for the next one. I also know that I wanted to return 2 if the parameter is 2. Okay, so I can be very dumb. I can say, oh, if n equals 1, then return 1, else return 2, and very dumb. Awesome, my tests work. All right, go a little bit further. Now it's going to be hard. Okay, now I get serious because I have to do a real test. Remove this, and I'm going to run it. And of course, I'm going to have a failure because factorial, that's not right. It expected to get 2, 4, 3, but instead it got 2 because 2 is the only thing I know how to return. So now I got to do a real factorial, right? So let's do a real factorial. If n equals 1, I return 1. Else, I return, you've all seen this a million times, n times factorial of n minus 1. I think that's how it goes. And I run it, boom, it worked. But now, because I wrote the test before I was writing the code, I said, what about this case? What is factorial of 0 supposed to be? Does anybody know? What's the right answer?
Just 0.
I guess so. Okay, I got an error though. It doesn't work for 0. I found a bug. Okay, really what I should have said is if it's 1, it's 1. Else if n equals 0, then it's 0. Else it's that. So now I run it, and oops, still a mistake. We're supposed to return 0, but it returned nil. Okay, let me look at my code. Yeah, of course, this is all wrong. It's else if n equals 0, then return 0, else return that. Now I run my tests, they all work. That's a really small snapshot of test-driven development. It really works. It forces you to think about the interface to your method, to your procedure, and how it should be called before you even have an idea how to implement it. And then you go through, now, I don't know what else. What else do we know about factorials? It works for negative. What is factorial supposed to do for negative numbers? Anybody know? I'm not a mathematician.
It's nothing. It's invalid, right?
Error?
It's not defined.
Not defined. But what do we want our method to do? You're the programmer, and you're writing this. What is the right behavior for your library function that does factorial in your math library?
Probably right.
It should be an error.
Should we raise an exception? Okay, so let's
How do you throw exceptions?
I'm going to show you. First, I want to say, I got to now quickly look up here, excuse me for a second, to say, I'm using Minitest spec raise check exception. I want to know the syntax for this. And exception must raise. Okay, got it. All right. So I'm going to start with this. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to call fact sub minus 100 dot must raise runtime error. Runtime error. End. So first I specify the behavior I want. I execute this and it says to me, whoa. Well, it gave me it crashed in a different way, stack level too deep. Okay, so that's an error. Okay, I know how to fix that. I'm just going to say else if, oops, I'm being a dumb programmer here. Else if n less than 0, then return nil. That's how I choose to do it. Boom. Oh my God, what happened here? Else if, what's the error? The error is, it's a very long error. I got a mistake here. What's wrong here? Else if and is less than 0, then return 0. I have something wrong here. Yeah, okay, so it basically said, no, I think what's wrong here is this must raise is what's wrong. Quickly check here. Must raise. Oh, wait, I meant mini test. So I remember what's wrong with my thing here. Mini test, stack, raise. Try again. Ah, got it right. Oh, lambda. Ah. Okay, I'll try that. Gonna get the syntax right for this error. So really what it is this lambda factorial minus 1 must raise runtime error. Try that. This is just syntactic sugar. Okay. Runtime error was expected, but nothing was raised. Ah, okay. Now I know that I'm checking for that. And now I go in here and I just say else if not, when it's 0, I'm going to just say raise runtime error. Run it, all tests pass. So this testing is actually even checking that this method of mine is returning raising an error when it's supposed to. So the beauty here is that if I go fix a bug later on and accidentally change something, like I reintroduce a bug, like because of a typo, I say there, and I run it, immediately I'm going to find, oh, one of the tests failed, expected 0 got a, fix it, okay? So that's test-driven development. That's a really quick snapshot. It also shows a couple of other things which are interesting. It shows that I'm using require here to incorporate the testing library. And this is a DSL. This is a domain-specific language. Because while this looks like English, it's just Ruby. This is a method, that's its parameter. That creates a block. The block spans from, in fact, if I collapse it here, you'll see. That's a block. It's a describe block. It has another method called it, which takes a parameter and a block. Another call to it, which takes a parameter and a block, all the way down. This is just regular Ruby. I can prove that to you by putting in here, put s, I am just Ruby. And I run this, and not only do I get my succeeded test, but I here have I am just Ruby. So that shows the power of the Ruby language to create other languages very, very easily. So this looks to you, and it took me a long time before I fully grasped the idea that describe is a function call, and factorials is a parameter to that function call, and it is a function call, and works for one is a parameter to it, but it is. And you'll see a lot of this. Like if you learn Rails, Rails has a lot of these DSL-like things, where there's things that look like declarative statements, but really they're implemented as Ruby. Okay, that's all I got. We're sort of out of time. What do you guys think? Give me some feedback. I'll close my eyes so I don't have to see you guys talk.
Really interesting. I was only familiar with Python before.
So did you guys find that do you guys want to have another session on more advanced Ruby stuff? Or did it pique your interest? Does anybody think they want to go try Ruby? What I've heard from my students that have been doing Java until they learned Ruby, that most of them far prefer Ruby over Java at this point. One of them still likes Java better. George, if you know him, from Germany. George, without an E at the end. Yeah, you're going to beat him up? Is that it? Who is it? I'm going to get it.
I'm still deciding.
Yeah. It's great. It's very, very expressive. You can type in fewer words to get more impact. There's much less boilerplate where you're typing the same thing over and over again. In the Ruby community, testing is a much bigger part of the culture. So people are always writing tests for things. And it's an interesting habit to try to learn because, I've taught Ruby and stuff like that multiple times, and I always talk about test-driven development, but it takes time before people really, grasp the idea that it's actually a technique that really pays off in productivity.
Can we learn Rails?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's,
You want a Rails quick demo next time? Sure.
can you talk about what it is and what it's about? Because I only know from the taglines and keywords.
Well, so Rails is a big Ruby library, right, which allows you to build a web server that's based on Ruby very, very efficiently. So it's a library of code and a set of patterns of implementation that lets you build an application. I'll just show you one of the toy applications that I use in my class. Form demo. So this is what a Ruby program looks like. Ruby programs have a whole bunch of sort of assumed subdirectories, like the app directory, which has an asset subdirectory and a controller subdirectory, and then inside it's just Ruby code. So this particular one, it's very short, is defining a class called item, which is stored in a database as a relational database, and when it's all said and done, this app produces this. It's running on a cloud service called Heroku, so it's on Heroku, and it has to wake up, and then you'll see what that app does. And it's an app that pretends to be a way for people to keep track of lost and found things, but it's just to illustrate concepts. So if I go to the bottom here and I say search, and I search for a wallet, it finds everything with the word wallet in it, and I can put a comment on it. I say I can put a comment on it, my comment, hello. So it's very simple. So it lets you build anything like that with relative ease. And this is using Ajax, and it's using JavaScript and CSS and Bootstrap and Postgres database. So that's basically, it lets you build things like that instead of building them in individual. It's still it's a big honk of stuff to learn, but once you get it under your belt, you can build apps like this. You'll know how to build. That's kind of what the course I'm teaching now is all about, is database-backed websites. Although next year when I teach the course again, I'm thinking about switching from Rails to Node.js and JavaScript, just to keep it interesting.
Yeah.
Huh?
I'd be interested in that. I don't know. I don't know Rails, but I've seen a little Node.js.
Rails is awesome. It's really great. It's really great. Okay, guys. I made a video of this. What do you want me to do? Do you want me to upload it to YouTube? I'll send it to whoever.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We can post it on there. So,
Okay.
thank you guys for coming.
Thanks for coming. See you next week. You're welcome. What do you guys want to do? So next week, I'm going to have it again. I haven't decided on the topic yet. Let me see what I have on my list to get a quick read on before you all run off. Just give me half a second.
Same time works for everyone? Good.
Meanwhile, if you don't mind, Peter.
Yeah, get signatures.
Wait, hold on. This one too.
Oh, yes. So these two. So basically, thank you so much for coming. This is Dice Kernel. So we basically look to put up any events in kind of relation to computer science that people are interested in doing. So Peter has very generously agreed to kind of work with us and run these things, which are very interesting. He knows a lot about. And he's actually teaching a class, IT entrepreneurship, which focuses on Rails and on, as you were saying. So basically, we offer kind of a myriad of topics. And if you guys are interested in this, we have this form. And to offer a lot of this stuff, we need money from the school board for food and to reserve rooms and for things like that. So right now we're only a recognized club, but we'd like to get charted. And this is what this paper was about. So I'm going to pass this around. If you're interested in joining the club, sign this. If you're if you're interested in just supporting us, then this is the form for you. If you want to join the club, you can sign them.
So basically, what the one with the ton of signatures does is it just says that you're okay as a Brandite student for Brandite's money to go to us. Yeah.
Very, very straightforward. So I'm just gonna pass this around. Maybe you can pass two around just for efficiency.
Yeah, we can pass another one.
So, and is everyone part of our listserv? So how did you guys find out about this event? Listserv?
Quito, 10.
So I could do next week, it could be about Rails. It could be about NoSQL databases. It could be about, what else looks interesting? You guys all know HTML and CSS cold?
I don't know what CSS.
Would that be a topic that would be interesting? Yeah, so that's the third choice. So that's three. Rails,
What about Sinatra?
Sinatra's another possibility, yeah. Sinatra, Rails, HTML and CSS, or NoSQL databases. Can you guys quickly sort out a preference? Go. Fight it out.
So, are you guys in 12? 12? Oh, where are you guys majors? Or have you taken 12 already?